There's so much science right now that just shows how important engagement with the arts is to the mental, cognitive, like every aspect of human life. And so important for children to engage with the arts, to have a better path to better learning, better cognitive skills, better social skills.
Welcome to Seriously Catherine, a podcast about taking your business seriously, but not yourself. All right, this week's hot take is brought to you by the Palette Community, a co-working and community space in downtown Saratoga Springs. If you don't know about Palette yet, you have been living under a rock, especially if you've been listening to this podcast. So get on that. You can learn more at www.paletlecommunity.com. All right, this week's hot take is all about all the upstate New Yorkers about the heat. I cannot accept it. Anyone that is not from the dirty south of southeast Louisiana would never complain of a humidity of 60%, which is what it is right now. In Saratoga Springs, the humidity is 60%. It's 82 degrees outside, which I will give it to you. It's warm. It is warm for Saratoga Springs, but it is nothing like New Orleans. And so I don't know. For me, it just seems very strange when I hear somebody complain about the heat. And I'm always cold, first of all. Like, I always have a sweater. Even like when it is hot, I'm like outside. It's like my upbringing trained me to always dress to be hot outside and then walk inside and it's freezing because everything's air conditioned. Everyone's ACs are blowing. My culture is to always bring a sweater or something. Anyway, I think everyone will be okay. The good thing about this, in my personal opinion, is that people will want to be inside drinking and painting, which I just happen to be in that sort of business. So I'm excited about the weekend. Also, this week is the last week of school, which is really unfortunate. Because I love my kids are in school. I do have to shout out, I know earlier this year, I guess, we talked about the Hunger Games, that is signing your kid up for summer camp. And I finally got my kids all off of the wait list for the Saratoga recreational camp. It's called Camp Saratoga. My kids love it. Peyton Sip also goes there and does art classes on Mondays. It is 8 weeks of pure childhood joy, entertainment, and activities, and I love it. I actually love Camp Saratoga more than I love school because the kids they come home exhausted, and it's just amazing. Unfortunately, though, school ends on Friday, and camp does not start until July 1st. I need to speak to someone. Why the gap? What, are we supposed to go on vacation or something? I need to figure this out. I mean, if anyone has any ideas on what to do with my children next week, Monday through Friday, not to mention that they're off on Wednesday, which is Juneteenth. I'm not hating on that. I think it's a great day to take off of school, but then Friday is the end. So I'm just a little triggered by this, and a little stressed, and a little like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my kids next week? So if you have any ideas, please send them my way. I like free ideas. I like activities that don't cost anything. So I think Saratoga Springs, the rec department and the school system needs to sort of get in sequence here. Let's do no gaps. That's my hot take. On this week's episode of Seriously Catherine, I am joined by the one, the only Elizabeth Sobol. She is our fearless leader at SPAC. She is so incredible. She's a powerhouse. Elizabeth Sobol is the president and CEO of SPAC. Again, if you don't know what SPAC is, you need to hang up the phone and go look this up because you have been living under a rock. SPAC is it has such an impact on Saratoga, on our culture, on our arts, on our lifestyle. And so I was so excited to have her on. And I have to be honest, I was a bit intimidated because I've never really gotten to know her. And she's just so incredible. Like one of these women that you just know, she moves people when she walks into a room, and she's lived a multitude of lives. She has so much experience and skills to bring to the table. We'll get into it. She tells us all about about everything, and I'm just so excited for you to meet Elizabeth Sobol. Let's get into it. It's Elizabeth Sobol.
Yep.
So you are the president and CEO of SPAC.
Yep.
For those that may not know what SPAC is, it's not just like this place that Dave Matthews comes and plays at. But sort of clarify that for us, because It's an amphitheater inside the state park, but there's a lot of collaborations and partnerships that you do a very good job of strategically managing.
Thank you.
But sort of clear the air of like what's what and what are you actually in charge of?
Right. Okay, great question, because I've been here 7.5 years and there's still so much misinformation out in the ether, despite the fact that we are constantly out there trying to educate people and inform them or re-educate them as to what SPAC is. So essentially, SPAC started as a 5,200-seat amphitheater, opened in 1966 in the park, so 5,200 seats under the amphitheater and room for another 20,000 on the lawn. And we have kind of our own designated perimeter, which is the SPAC grounds. But we are a long-term tenant of the state parks. Spa State Park is 2,400 acres, as you know, of like historic buildings and pools and golf courses and tennis courts and woodland walks and geysers and streams and all these things. But SPAC is that central perimetered area where the amphitheater is. And so we are responsible for that piece of the park. I often get people like calling me saying, there's a bunch of like empty beer cans out around the stream or whatever. It's like, sorry, call parks. That's not SPAC, right? So SPAC is a roughly $12 million a year not-for-profit organization. Half of that is contributed income, so donations, sponsorships, memberships, board gifts, and the other 50% is earned income, so our own ticket sales. Live Nation, who are more than just a renter, they're a partner in many ways, but they pay us rent to do their shows there. Mm-hmm. So, and then there are other miscellaneous sources of revenue, but we often get conflated with Live Nation. So when I go to, I'm not going to name who it was, a very flourishing downtown business that I went to for support. And the person said, why would I give you money? Like you guys print money over there. I had to say, no, you're probably thinking about Live Nation. Like, we definitely do not print money at SPAC. So there's a lot of misconception about Live Nation SPAC. Mm-hmm. So SPAC was founded to be really an incredible refuge and presenter of the great art forms, ballet, classical music. The opera was there for a long time. Obviously, jazz has a big presence. And so those are the genres that more or less we present in the SPAC amphitheater. And then Live Nation come in with all the pop and rock shows. So that's really important to understand, because without SPAC being the steward of this organization and having been built as a not-for-profit organization venue, Live Nation couldn't actually be there. Mm-hmm. We're the ones through whom Live Nation can have a presence in the park. So some people might go, well, why do I need to support SPAC? Like, let SPAC go away and just let Live Nation come in and do, like, not too many people would say that, but There are some people who are like, I only go to Live Nation shows. Why should I support SPAC? But SPAC's presence is absolutely fundamental to the Live Nation presence as well. And we work very closely together. That's really critical. A lot of people don't realize that SPAC is not just a summer venue, that we are a year-round operation. Back in 2016, when I got here, we were serving about 5,000 kids in the region with our education program. We now serve over 50,000 students throughout the capital region. In 2021, we opened the SPAC School of the Arts. We're partnering with 120 different not-for-profit organizations to bring arts into every corner of the capital region, serving rural communities, marginalized communities in the cities, and everything, really the whole region in so many different areas. And that's so vital, because not only are we trying to make up for the fact that the arts are no longer really in the schools, and let's face it, not that valued by our society. But even if you're not like an arts lover, there's so much science right now that just shows how important engagement with the arts is to the mental, cognitive, like every aspect of human life. And so important for children to engage with the arts, to have a better path to better learning, better cognitive skills, better social skills. That education piece is extremely important to us. So we talk about the health aspects of the arts, and not just for kids, for people of all ages. Then the other important thing is what SPAC does in terms of cultural tourism to the community, the economic impact of SPAC for the community. And in 2023, Camoin and Associates did a study of economic impact. SPAC annually contributes $105 million to the regional economy. Wow. Every year. Again, people think, oh, it's the arts. Like, what do they really do? It's just, we're giving money so they can have these, like, beautiful little performances of ballet and orchestra. Absolutely not. They're so powerful at every level, from the human level to the economic level and everything in between. So those are really important aspects of what we do that we take very seriously. And then the last thing that I'll talk about in this rambling intro here is that one of the things I saw when I was first interviewed for the job was that SPAC very much was a seasonal venue. Mm-hmm. And in a city that is so thriving, and this is not a snowbird community, right. It's a year-round community. People love it. They love being here every month of every year. It's really, you can't turn the lights on in May and turn them off in September. You need to be here and be part of the community and contributing to the community 12 months a year. Over the last 7.5 years, we've gone from being a seasonal venue to being a very robust mm-hmm. presenter of culinary arts and musical arts, dance arts, visual arts, healing arts, just presenting literally year-round now to serve the community and bring these incredible experiences to everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you came to Saratoga Springs in 2016. I arrived in 2011, opened Paint and Sip in 2012. And I remember when I first opened that business, everyone was like, oh, you'll do really great during the summer months when there's so many people here. But the rest of the year, what are you going to do? And I'm like, actually, I foresee it being very popular in the winter months because people are looking for something to do. Maybe they're not outdoor people, and our business is the opposite. I mean, I just remember early on conversations and like talking points, I just felt like a broken record was like, no, it's year round. This is a year round opportunity to build economic development, and there's so much development available to us. Like, I mean, again, I got here in 2011, there was no Chick-fil-A, which was the biggest shock to me at the time, but there was no Paint and Sip. There was no craft beer scene yet. Like this, there was a lot of like things that I don't think had made its way up here. You correct me if I'm wrong, but you came from the city before. So, I mean, it's a bit of a culture shock to come up here and be like, oh my God, what, people don't even know that this is up here. And it's just like this hidden gem. And there are some people who might say, well, let's keep it that way. We like the quiet nature of this town, and it's like a secret gem of upstate New York, and let's keep it that way. I'm like, if I have a resource that is fulfilling and amazing, I want to share it with the world. So I'm constantly telling people about Saratoga Springs and being obnoxious about how people need to get their asses up here and see all that we have to offer all year round.
I could not agree with you more strongly. I mean, the thing is, like, I had no idea what was up here. Like, so I worked in the arts and entertainment business for literally decades. I ran a talent agency for IMG in the city for many, many years. And then from there, I went to Universal Music and ran a record label. My husband and I had an apartment in Miami Beach, and I was finally like, oh, I can actually go to that apartment and actually have time to go to the beach. Because before, my schedule and my life was really crazy. I was traveling all the time and working crazy hours, and literally left Universal, went down to Miami, and 4 days later, I got a call from out of the blue, a person saying, hey, I'm from blah, blah, blah search firm, and we're doing the search for the new head of SPAC, and your name keeps coming up. Let's just say I had a lot of attitude about that call, and I was like, you know what, let me walk out on my balcony here and describe the view of the ocean, and you're going to tell me why the hell I would ever consider moving to upstate New York. Because I had never been to Saratoga, and this is a really important point. All those years I was managing artists, and I was sending them up to SPAC. I knew of SPAC because they were coming here to play. And then when I was at Universal, the SPAC would be a regular stop on a record promotion tour or whatever for artists. But I never felt compelled to come here. When I was in the city, I would go to Tanglewood, I would go to Wolf Trap, I'd fly out to the Hollywood Bowl or Ravinia to see my artists perform, and I never felt compelled to come here because the way the city presented itself, was honestly, the people in our office, who were doing the tours and everything really thought it was like, they kind of knew there were some horses up here, and they thought there were like 2 hotels here, neither of which the artists wanted to stay in. And the artists would come up, do their gig. They knew they were going into the woods. That's what, they would play their gig, get their check, and head back south.
Yeah.
If nobody tells you
to stay
you
here,
need to be here because this place is magic. So I totally blew off the search firm. get cracked up when I think about like how the whole thing unfolded. But a good friend of mine who was in the field and ran another major festival called me and said, I keep hearing that you're like blowing off the search firm. Like, what is the matter with you? Get over yourself and go up there. And I said, but it's blood. He's like, I'm telling you, as a friend, get your butt up to Saratoga. So I came up here, and it was a cool June Sunday afternoon, and I was starving. You know, I knew where I had just come from because we came up Route 9 from the Northway. And so I knew not to go that way because I didn't see any place to eat. And then so I thought coming out of the hotel, I'm just going to turn right and go walk into the city. I had no idea what was there. None. Now I'm walking down Broadway. Now I pass by Congress Park. I'm like, what the hell? That is like just light shining on green and fountains of water, and just like, I was like, what is this, right? And now I progress to what I now know to be Phila Street, take a right. I happen to be like a completely rabid book lover. Lyrical ballad. Hello, what? And then I take a left on Putnam just because it looked funky. I'm like, what's down there? Mio Posta was still there. I had a really beautiful meal there. Feeling better, step by step. Walk over to what I now know to be Caroline Street. Take a left. I'm like, holy shit, there's like music coming out of every doorway. Now I get to the top to Broadway. I have to understand that all those years I lived in New York City and would look for my summer getaway. The place I would go is Southern Vermont. Why? Because there was hiking, there was kayaking, there were mountains, and there was Northshire Books in Manchester. And Dorset Theater. It was a perfect mix of like the nature and all the cultural offerings. Years later, I'm walking up Caroline Street. I take a left. First of all, the historic preservation takes my breath away. It's like, wow, what a main street of of this small city. And now I walk right by Northshire Books. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
And they must have just opened.
I think they've been open a year or two.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, if somebody had asked me to write the description of the perfect small city that I would move to if I could create that thing in my mind, this was it.
This is it.
And I had no idea.
And you just so happened to run into the all those little things that spoke to you. That's like the universe. That's divine intervention is what I call that.
Yes.
So, and they wanted you because you're a badass.
I don't think they use that word, but thank you.
Well, I don't think we use that word enough in general.
I totally agree, because you are one of them
Oh,
also.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you.
Okay.
I mean, again, I don't know if we said this already, but I remember meeting you at this event. It was actually like a political, the local politics around here. You kind of have to participate for the entertainment, if you will. And it was at an event like this, and I was just about to really launch Palette, and so I went to this event, and I did not network the room like I should have, but I met you for like a hot second, and then but I met your husband, who is, I don't know if he's tall, dark, and handsome. I think he's taller than me, but he is like a Latin man, right?
He is Cuban. He's Cuban, and he is a multi-Grammy nominated musician.
No biggie.
And the thing I do miss, like, we love dancing salsa together, but there's no salsa music up here unless he's playing it, and that makes it really hard to dance if he's also playing. So,
have you ever met Donna Abul?
I don't think so.
She is this powerhouse woman. She's the CEO, founder of Repeat Business Systems, but like by day she's this incredible businesswoman, and by night she's a dancer.
Get out salsa?
Yes, I don't know if she does salsa or
she.
I'm not a dancer, so but like all of that type of ish dancing. So you accepted this job.
Yeah.
But I mean, how did you convince him? He had to come along with you, right? To leave Miami and leave.
It's that's a whole long story. But we had been together 15 or 16 years by that point, and I had, at a certain point when we met, I had a place in Park Slope, and he was living in Miami. And then we met because I was representing an artist that he was the music director for. And then I found out about his group, Tiempo Libre, and so I started managing that group because I was working with a lot of different Cuban artists at the time. And then they started taking off, and so did we. And at a certain point, I was just kind of ready to, I had been married before, and I really felt like I just needed to get out of Dodge and leave all that behind. And I was like, wanted to be down in Miami because I was working with a lot of Latin artists. So I was already thinking of moving down there. We moved in together and then ultimately bought an apartment together. And at a certain point, particularly when I went from IMG to Universal, basically I was like, I'll take the job, but I'm going to keep the apartment in Miami, and you're going to pay for me to commute, basically.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a crazy thing, but it worked. He was always out on the road with the band. I was going back and forth between Miami and New York, or in those days, like we had so many offices, around the world that, I had to go to. So it was great. And then when this came up, I came back and he's like, what do you think? I was like, I'm kind of speechless because I think I really want to do this. And he said, well, let's do it. And he said, you gave up your Brooklyn life to move down here for us to be together down here. Now it's my turn.
Yeah, like leapfrog.
I said, but you never even been there. Like, how could you be so? And he said, yes, I have. And he reminded me that his band had played at Skidmore.
Oh, my gosh.
And there's this little red blanket on the futon in the office where our little dog slept. And he picked it up and was like, remember this? It was like one of the Saratoga racecourse blankets.
Yeah.
So he's like, I've been there. I'm cool. Go for it.
I love that. Okay, so let's switch gears and talk about women and leadership. We have a lot of members at Palette who are ambitious or are striving to be unapologetic about their ambitions. Yeah. And I do feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like how many people were in the running for this position? Like, did you go through rounds and rounds of interviews? Because from my perspective, it was sort of like you were the get. And once they convinced you, like, was there any competition, or do you even not know about that?
I don't know the ins and outs, but I don't think it was a hotly contested job. Part of it, and I can be honest about this, is that SPAC had gone through really tough times, and it had really sort of fallen off. And so it wasn't like, number one, everybody wanted the job, and number two, they certainly weren't clamoring to come to upstate New York because they have no idea how frickin' magical the whole place is. Jorge and I both are like big nature lovers, hikers. I grew up in North Carolina, like plant world, and working with healing plants and being around natural beauty is like a really, really important part of my life and his life. And having been in the city for so many years and been apart from that, when I came up here, I was like, whoa. In addition to all those things that the litany of things that I gave you, just this feeling of being so connected to nature here.
Yeah, and the medicinal qualities of your, just right there in the state park, like back in the day, they just drank the water.
Totally. The water, and now, there's, again, all the science of, like, forest bathing. It sounds like a, woo-woo, oh, my God. But no, the science is that there are molecules emitted from the canopies of the trees that we're breathing in that are turning on serotonin receptors in our brains. They're like brain chemistry that's responsible for how you feel. And the same thing happens with experiences of beauty through music or dance or whatever. So I'm looking at SPAC as like this like super duper pharmacy of wonder and awe. You can come get like mega doses of magic.
Totally. So there's like this through line. I'm a Disney fanatic, and I'm also from New Orleans. So like obviously I have this just natural desire to be around innovation and imagination and wonder and music. And the only thing I knew about Saratoga Springs was that there was a resort in Disney World named after Saratoga Springs. And I don't know, I just think that there's like a connection there. Yeah. Like the high you feel when you're at a live music concert in the French Quarter of New Orleans, like is the same sort of like therapy you feel when you're walking down Main Street USA in Disney World, in my case, maybe not everyone's case, but it's the same sort of, elation you feel when you're at the track or when you're at SPAC. It's just, it's difficult to communicate or articulate to people who have never experienced it before.
I totally agree with you. Tomorrow in my annual meeting remarks, I'm going to talk about just how changed I am as a human being. They say that every 7 years, the human body has replaced every single cell in the body. So you're kind of completely different at a cellular level, and yet obviously your essence is the same. And that's kind of like what's happened with SPAC. Like in the last 7.5 years, everything about us has changed, and yet we have the same DNA that was part of our inception and everything. I feel like a different person, partly because my cells are different. Okay, whatever. But largely because I've been living in this place that is not only healthy because I'm exposed to this beauty around, all the time, but also this incredibly generous philanthropic community. I've never lived in a place like this where people come together to solve problems. And not to say it's an idyllic paradise or whatever, we have problems here, but I've never been in a community like this where so many people cared so deeply. Yeah, I contemplate like my years at IMG. Like, I was trained as a musician. I was not trained to go into the business world. I was like a pianist in a small, semi-rural town in North Carolina. My imagination was the only thing that kept me from going crazy there because it was such a small town with small town views and everything. And then I ended up coming to the city and getting into what we would now call a startup management company. And it was a basement apartment on West 85th Street. It was all handmade furniture. IMG, the sports behemoth, bought the company, and we went from this tiny little entity to kind of the global leader.
Wow.
And I was there for that like comet ride, and it was incredible. But, speaking about challenges that women have, because it was a sports firm, it was all men. IMG, we would walk into the building and like you might run into Tiger Woods or you might run into Andre Agassi or you might, it's just sort of like, it was kind of heady. And here we are, this performing arts division, right? And most of the people who worked there had no clue who the people that we represented were, but that's fine. But I was very much catapulted into a very testosterone-laden atmosphere where on the one hand, we became this global leader over time, largely because of what IMG was able to offer us in terms of resources and, offices around the world and expertise. But I also always felt that I had to be on my guard, that I had to play the locker room game, that I had to speak a different language, that I had to, sounds so silly, but I used to love sports when I was a little kid, go to basketball and football games with my dad, but I would keep up with sports stats. So God forbid I got in the elevator with one of these sports guys, I'd actually have something to talk to him about that he understood, right?
Yeah.
And then I went from there to Universal, and if there was no more testosterone-driven place than Universal also, I was literally the only female label president in the whole company.
Wow.
And I remember I started there in 2013. I think it was a spring, whatever year it was a spring. And then in January, the Grammys are coming up late January, February. I was going to my first Grammys as a label president at Universal. And so there was this thing called the Gathering of the 100, right? And the 100 were the 100 top executives in the company worldwide. So I was going out to Santa Monica, where one of our headquarters was, and I was both excited and terrified to be going because I had to do a presentation along with all the other label presidents as to what we were doing and what we were focusing on. But I was excited, and I walked into the room where everybody was gathering for the opening dinner, and there were literally 3 women in the room.
And you being one of them.
And I was one of them.
And it's like, how can you not be intimidated by that?
It was so hard. Like at IMG, I definitely had my sort of replicating male behavior tactics and became tough and driven. And even though we were working in the arts, like, a lot of obviously business rigor to make sure that we were turning a profit and not at risk of being spun off by the jocks. And I have to say, like, I have brought a lot of that rigor to how I run SPAC, which has been really great. But then to go to Universal, which was an even more, it was a tough atmosphere. However, when I got to Universal, they sort of handed me a business unit that I was supposed to make into this new label that I was supposed to be creating out of nothing. And in that business unit was 80% men, 20% women, and of course the 20% women were also like secretaries and assistants, right? And by the time I left, we were 80% women and 20% men. What we were able to do, it was a shift from how I had been at IMG, where I really took on the male mantle of drive, push,
do what they do, and that's how you'll succeed.
Exactly. And by the time I left IMG, I was like, I am mush. Like I have to rethink this.
You can't even play the game anymore at that point. You have to totally reinvent it in this new opportunity that you have.
So I go to Universal and I kind of vow to myself that I'm going to find a different way to do it. And I was very lucky because one of my most treasured colleagues in the business, Leslie Coleman Smith. She was SVP of marketing at Sony Classics. I took all my artists to that label because of her, because she was such a great, imaginative, goal-oriented, but like fantastic, committed person who would just make these albums pop. You know, and so I took all my artists to them because of her. And then when I went to Universal, I immediately realized how desperately I needed a number two who could help me guide me through the particulars of the record business, but also was like a real kindred spirit, you know. And I managed to get her to leave Sony and come over and be my number two at Universal. And what we were able to do was create within Universal a label that had an ethos around what women do best, which is nourishing and providing a creative space for artists to feel like they were supported and that their vision was being, we were helping realize their vision rather than kind of like, oh, that's not going to sell. We got to find a new,
or like a trust and a loyalty and a safety.
Yes.
You're so right. That is what women do. I feel like I love community building because it's like, what is my best use of time and what am I really, really good at it? And I'm good at making people feel like I've got their back and there's a safe place here. And like the most incredible stuff comes from that, right? When you're truly open and vulnerable and you got the safety net, you got people who've got your back. And at that point you can think bigger, right? So you can imagine more and you can innovate, and it's also fun.
It's fun. It really is fun. And it was, even from a business perspective, it led us to some successes. Like there were a couple of artists out there, one in particular, Snarky Puppy. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm not familiar, but I love it already.
Are an amazing band. And they were on a roll. They were like winning Grammys right and left. They were like just taking off. All the record companies wanted them, but they had this real indie perspective, and they were never going to sign with a major label, and particularly not Universal, which is like the dark side, right? But we got them, we kept at them, and they would come in. I'm like, listen, you've gotten to know us as people. You know what we can do as people for you. Just think of us as we're actually squatting here in this building on Broadway, right? But in fact, like, we have created this safe space, this environment at Universal where you can have us as your team helping you sort of achieve those artistic goals and dreams that you have, but we also have all the massive power and leverage of Universal to bring to the case, right? Yeah. And they came to us, and it was awesome. A big deal in the industry at the time because there were so many labels going after them. The girls got them, you know?
Yeah, I love that.
It was excellent. Just kind of top it off, when I came to Saratoga, I was coming out of literally decades of just competition, like fierce competition. And then to come here and feel like you had collaboration and compassion could be the hallmarks of what you did rather than competition.
Well, and also there's such a passion. That's one thing that I mean, because Saratoga is just like, you can maybe go on social media and see people have very strong opinions. You might say, oh, people are so divisive here, they can't get on the same page. And it's like, I look at that and I'm like, everyone's very passionate. They're in love with the city that they live in.
I totally agree with you. Like, I feel like it's a really difficult time that we're living in, but it's also I see so many hopeful signs. We've gone through a lot of growth and transition and transformation. Obviously, the most public-facing thing we do is obviously the programming, and so you have some challenges when your primary outward-facing artists are like the Philadelphia Orchestra and the New York City Ballet, which are two of the greatest. Certainly New York City Ballet is the greatest ballet company in the world, and the Philadelphia Orchestra is like one of a select of the greatest orchestras in the world, and they're in our backyard every summer.
But that is also not an easy feat, right? To keep bringing them back, we have to make sure the community has to show up for those.
Thank you for saying that.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there are some key stakeholders at play that are like, of course they're going to come. And it's like, well, like, let's not hang our hat on that.
Well,
it's not in the bag every year.
No. And I think people have to understand that. So we're a $12 million a year organization. Every year we take a $2.5 million shortfall on 4 weeks of programming. The ballet, we lose almost $1 million on a week, and the orchestra $1.2 million or so on 3 weeks.
And like dive into that a little more, into the numbers of it. And when you say you're a $12 million organization, that's your operating budget. Like that's what it costs to pay for everything.
Exactly.
That's just not like what you're bringing in. I mean, that's the baseline of what you need to bring in.
Totally.
And even if you're not for profit, like that doesn't mean to say that you don't want to profit.
Yeah.
And then be able to reinvest that money back into programs.
Absolutely. And so really, I can't disclose exact amounts, of these contracts and everything, but we're talking about weekly, fees of over $1 million,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is like dig into how do we improve that? How do we improve it so that you're not out that it's ticket sales. It's people
ticket
showing
sales.
up.
It's totally ticket sales. That's the thing that, like, people keep coming back to me like, why can't the ballet go back to 2 weeks, right? Well, number one, because we lose $1 million on a week already. Well, you just need to market more. It's like, well, marketing costs money, but also we do spend a lot on marketing. And it is not easy. These are not art forms that are growing art forms. They are actually art forms that are losing audience. And we've actually been bucking the trends. We have seen growth, but every year their expenses go up. And not just the company's expenses, but the stagehand unions, that's like so much money just for production. The marketing costs go way up every year. Like everything goes up. Yeah. And yet I think people, balk at, well, why are they raising prices? Well, because everything's going up, Yeah. And so I think there's this notion that somehow the arts aren't supposed to
cost
as
much.
I think people just don't understand exactly how expensive it is to put on a season. So ticket sales are absolutely critical, fundraising as well. And I think there are a lot of people out there who are ticket buyers who don't realize that becoming a member really helps us.
Becoming a member of SPAC is like becoming a member of Palette. You're part of a community. You're part of the fabric of the organization. You have insight into what's happening behind the scenes, what's coming down the pipeline. You have, I'm assuming you have access to you and your team, and I'm sure you're constantly looking for feedback and ways to improve. So sort of like I think a lot of maybe people do just think it's I'm buying a ticket to the Philadelphia Orchestra. And it's like no, become a member and buy a ticket to come.
No, and the thing is, so becoming a member, and you can become a member for $125, but you can also, the higher you go up the levels, the more perks you get. So if you're in a transactional state of mind, like there's plenty you get. So for instance, you get member discounts, you get member pre-sale. So if there's something, that you really want to go see and you want to make sure you're getting the best seats, having that pre-sale access is really important. Also, SPAC members get early access to Live Nation tickets, right?
Yes, I noticed this. Pitbull is coming to SPAC. I know everyone's really excited about John Legend, but I'm excited about Pitbull.
Listen, and that's the beauty of SPAC. There's something for everybody.
There is. There's Kids Bop.
Yep.
That was like the first concert that Posey ever went to. So the podcast, the name of it is Seriously Catherine. Okay. And I think I'm pretty clear. I don't really take myself so seriously. But I do take my business seriously. I take economic development seriously, Saratoga Springs seriously. So can you share a time or share sort of some anecdote of like how you don't take yourself so seriously, but you're still able to execute in business? 2
examples of that would be in my very first review after my first year of being the president of SPAC. I got comments that, does she really dress appropriately for this job? I don't
You're not wearing a business suit.
No.
I'm not wearing, I don't think I've worn a business suit before, but it was never a black one. It's always a bright colored business suit.
Right. So like for me, like how you dress and feeling comfortable and just doing what makes you feel good in your own skin is really important. So I don't really give a shit what people think about what I put on. And secondly, I don't give a shit. Well, that was another point that was on my review. It's like, does that salty language really going to work in the capital region? And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, my don't take myself seriously in that I'm going to be who I am. If you don't like it, I'm happy to step down and go, finally retire.
Yeah, I'll go back to Miami and I'll overlook at the water. So, but also, the numbers don't lie, right? Like, the numbers do not lie. The SPAC has seen such growth and evolution. I'm so thrilled that the School of the Arts opened. Like, we put Posey and Ruby both in classes there.
Nice.
They've loved it.
Great.
The musical theater, we have another friend of ours, daughter, obsessed. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to get on the train and send your kid down to New York City to have some of this experience and exposure to these artists. I'm so excited about that. And then the culinary arts. Again, I'm from New Orleans, and that is one thing that I sometimes don't know that I'm getting what I need.
I will say that is one area where I struggle, and frankly, one of the reasons why I was so intent on starting culinary arts, that it's not that there isn't some terrific food here, but it's limited, and there's not a lot of diverse palates and flavors and approaches to food and everything. And I also, like, for me, like, how we eat food, how we source ingredients and everything really speaks to what's happening to our planet. And so, like, an ethos around sustainability and being stewards of our place there in the park, and how do we help create these connections to the planet. It's all about, like, being a change agent for good in the world. Making connections, but humans to humans, humans to the planet. This is a book that came out last year that's been kind of my Bible. It's just called Awe, A-W-E, and it's a neuroscientist and researcher who's been looking at the neurobiological changes, or the brain chemistry changes with these experiences of everyday awe. And there's all this data that, shows very clearly that when people are sharing music together, and particularly if they're music and dance, their heartbeats synchronize.
Oh, wow.
They're literally beating in time with each other. And you could be on the SPAC lawn with 1,000 other people. There's going to be a myriad of ages and differences and cultures and outlooks and perspectives and political views and social views and everything. But in that moment, everybody's heart is beating together.
Yeah, that is remarkable. And when you experience it firsthand, there's nothing like that. So I thank you so much for being here and sharing all your stories with us. And anyone listening, if you don't go become a member of SPAC after this conversation, then, like, get out of here. Right?
You go for it. Thank you for laying down the law for us.
Yes, anytime. All right. This week's Saratoga Lifestyle segment, brought to you by Saratoga Living After Hours. I have to, pause on Saratoga because I'm a little overwhelmed with Saratoga. The Belmont, we're still recovering from this. It was a great community experience for everyone to have the Belmont in Saratoga. But I got out of Dodge last weekend. We went on the boat in Lake George, a friend's boat, not my boat. They talked us into going back out to the lake and going camping on one of these islands in Lake George. And so I was like, you know what? We got nothing else to do. We could really, the Hovers could use a timeout of mini respite, if you will. So we decided to say yes, and we went camping on an island in Lake George. It's a part of the Narrows, which is like a group of islands, and it was called Floating Battery, which I didn't really understand what the name, who named these islands. It was so cool. We pitched a tent, and it was really quite seamless and flawless. It was so much fun. We had hot dogs for breakfast. We did the campfire in the morning because we got there too late on Saturday night, and we went out to dinner at, I can't actually remember the name of the restaurant that we went, but we took the boat to the dinner place, and we went up all these just natural cobblestone steps. It was so amazing and adorable. And we had dinner, and then we had to take the boat back in the darkness. It was so nice though, because we had the moonlight to guide us on how to get back to Floating Battery campsite. We actually had very little gas, so we were shocked that we actually made it back. In cars, it alerts you when you're running low. I always drive until the light comes on and they start to say you're out of gas. I know that I can go another 25 miles with that light on. But in boats, they don't do that. You have to be paying attention. But we managed to get to the dock, and we were below E. So there you go. And then the next day we did the campfire, and we did hot dogs for breakfast, and we went to the Bear's Cup, which is this adorable coffee shop in Bolton Landing, which is so cute. The bagels are adorable. The coffee is great. And they were playing Taylor Swift, which, I can't complain about that. But Lake George is so beautiful. It's the perfect timing. It's summertime, so get up there. And I don't know if this is going to be frowned upon by Saratogians, but if there's a lake you're going to visit and spend time on, it's got to be Lake George. Lake George over Saratoga Lake. Sorry, not sorry. That is what I have to say about that. Next up, a serious business lesson from me, Catherine Hover. And I've been going through some changes and some evolution in my career or my business. We recently had some changes over at Palette. Marcella Hammer is the new CEO of the community, and that's really exciting. And it's kind of like given me this opportunity to try my hand in something new. And so I will be venturing into the recruitment and staffing space because I think that there's a lot of impact that I can make on that world and impact a multitude of industries that I think could use some impacting. So I'm excited about that. And so my business lesson is to never, ever, ever underestimate the power of your network. I pride myself in being wealthy in human capital and giving people the opportunity to help me when I need help. And Lord knows I need a lot of it. Most recently, I've been needing a lot of help. So I just appreciate so much my community, my network, my people who really do believe that I can do it all and they want to help me do it all. So what happened was I had reached out to someone in my community, Jennifer Massey, who's like this amazing advocate of women, and I've just always admired her. And she's one of those women that is like so sweet and kind. So I shared with Jennifer some things that I was changing over at Palette and new direction or what's happening next. And she suggested that I talk to someone else in her community and her network, also in my network. And we are excited to work on this thing together. It's just even now when when I think like, oh my God, I've met all the people that I could possibly meet. They all know what I'm about. They all know what I'm working on. That ain't true. You have to keep on sharing. You have to keep on asking. You have to keep on reaching out. And I think it's been so eye-opening to me that I still have so much growth, even though I feel quite accomplished. We're always growing. We're always learning. And I am just super excited. And again, it all goes back to what is the power of your network? I wish you could measure this. There's got to be a way we can measure someone's network. And are you activating it? Are you using it to the best of your ability? Are you making sure you're getting a return on this investment of networking? Is everyone aware of what you're going through, what you're working on? I implore you to think about this because I thought I had tapped out and I have not even scratched the surface, clearly. And I implore you to think about the power of your network, thinking about, is everyone in the loop of what you're working on? And that is my serious business lesson this week. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to connect with me, slide into my DMs on Instagram. My handle is Catherine Hover.